Thank you, friends. Shabbat shalom. Greetings to you all. Hope you all had a fabulous week. I cannot believe another week is gone. We're just whipping through the summer, the seasons, and the Torah. And friends, please congratulate yourselves. I certainly congratulate you. You've now read 4 of the 5 books of Moses, and for some of you, it is the second and even the third time. And from what I hear, you continue to get new and different things every time we look at what it says. And that's what a living organic system should do. Stimulate thought, prayer, process. And I'd like everyone to send healing energy out to Phil, who was undergoing surgery this week. He's not missed a show since we began, and he has found a reconnection to his spiritual past in listening and watching. And Phil, I think of the words of Bob Dylan and Ain't Talking. They say prayer has the power to heal, so pray for me, Mother. Yes, my friends, prayer has the power to heal. So let us all pray for Phil, and let us focus on the healing that needs to be done right now. For Phil, for the Steinleys, for the families of victims in Tennessee, for the world. Healing starts and stops with each of us alone and the energy we put into it. You may think, what can I do? Thoughts are things, and worlds turn on thoughts. So send out healing, send out goodwill, send out love. It only takes you. Now, interestingly enough, the song goes on to say, in the human heart an evil spirit can dwell. I'm trying to love my neighbor and do good unto others, but oh mother, things ain't going well. And yes, in the human heart an evil spirit can dwell. We saw that in Genesis 6, when God says man has evil in his heart. Unfortunately, my friends, we see too much of that evil, so much so that it now seems the norm. Now, this week marks an important date in history. It actually marks the anniversary of one of the darkest days of Jewish history. So horrific, it is a national day of mourning, the 9th of Av. The famous 9/11 of Judaism taking place, not on the 11th day of the 9th month, as with our U.S. friends, but on the 9th day of the 11th month. The date that is believed to be the date Moses heard the report of the spies we've talked about, and therefore the condemnation of a generation. The date of the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in 586 before the Common Era, resulting in the death of over 100,000 and the exile of more than 1 million. The date of the destruction of the second temple by the Roman Emperor Titus in 70 of the Common Era, which also resulted in the deaths and exile of millions. And for those who might not have been aware, it's also believed to be the date the Bar Kokhba revolt was crushed by the Emperor Hadrian, the date of the order of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492 during the Spanish Inquisition, and the date the mass deportation began of Jews to concentration camps from the Warsaw Ghetto. Quite a day. And it doesn't really seem quite right to call it a holiday, does it? I guess if you could simply erase a date from the year, this would be it. And it'll be followed next week by the Day of Love, the 15th of Av, the real Jewish Valentine's Day. And we will celebrate that together next week, and we can celebrate the fact that we have survived the 9th of Av all these years. Friends, we are beginning the book of words, the book we call Deuteronomy, the book that somehow does not quite fit. And when we're finished, you can decide for yourselves. The beginning of this book is amazing, simply amazing. And it's a book that begins with a beautiful juxtaposition. It is 11 days from Horeb, but it was in the 40th year. Wow, 11 days that took 40 years. The irony, the waste, the necessity, the experience, the growth, the suffering, the need for a new generation who had not known slavery, the inability of humans to outgrow a trauma of mammoth proportion to an entire nation. Perhaps it is fitting that we begin it on the 9th day of the 11th month, the day of mourning. Remember, friends, we began the year after concluding Deuteronomy because the Torah is circular. And it ends with the Song of Moses, an amazing prophetic ode that, like the great epic poems of classical literature, foretells key events. And we read it and said, what if? What if the Torah began instead of ended with this? Would you look at things differently? Well, we're about to begin the book that ends the Torah, and in a few weeks we'll be reading that incredible song again. But let's spend a minute and talk about what if. What if you turned right instead of left? What if you said yes instead of no? What if you had waited just another few minutes? We all wonder at times, what if? But friends, do not think in terms of changing the past. Don't think, what if I had done this? How would my life have turned out? Think of how that what if revelation can impact and make you change your future. You control your destiny. We have the great gift of free choice, the ultimate gift of freedom. Friends, this is Devarim, the words Deuteronomy. This is a special parsha to open a special book. The fifth of the 5 books of Moses, the book of words called Deuteronomy, and it is an especially special parsha for me because it is my ordination parsha. And I can still recall the transference of energy as the Beit Din, the 3 rabbi members of the House of Judges, put their hands on me and blessed me as Moses blessed Joshua. It has been done with all rabbis since. It was a very powerful moment, and I will always remember this parsha in a very special way. In this book of words, you will notice, my friends, it is the words that play the dominant role. Watch, or should I say listen, as Moses mixes past, present, and future generations. So in the end, the messages imparted in this book become the messages for each generation who reads this text. For some, the opening parsha best belongs elsewhere, perhaps at the end of Numbers. It's really the end of the journey. And it's the next parsha that truly begins the repetition of the law. And that's what this book is about. You see, the ancient name for the book of Deuteronomy is Mishnah HaTorah, which means repetition of the Torah. And friends, that is what it will seem like. Laws and stories you read in the other books, all summarized here. But as I said last time, slightly different. But don't think of it as Deuteronomy. Think of it as repetition. Remember, friends, we take the English name from the Greek, and the Greek name for this book was Deuteronomos, which means second law. It was a retelling of the law. Now, another and probably more proper way to translate it would be the repetition of the teaching, because that is what Torah means. You see, Torah here is still a verbal noun that means teaching. But the repeated stress of Deuteronomy begins to push Torah in the direction of the meaning it would subsequently have, and which it has now, the name not only of this book, but of all the 5 books of Moses. And it's a book of expounding and explaining, and that is probably what sets this book apart the most from the preceding 4. Friends, so much of what we have read had to see or visual themes. Now things change. It is a book about words. Devarim, the name of the books, it's what you hear. More than any other biblical text, it is a book of words, as the title suggests. Moses reminds the people, "And the Lord spoke to you from the midst of the fire, the sound of words you did hear, but no image did you see except the sound." The eye, which has seen so much from Egypt until this moment, can see nothing. The ear alone can receive the commanding divine words. And Moses adds, "And me did the Lord charge at that time to teach." God writes the text of the 10 words in stone, then designates Moses, the continuing intermediary, as the leader and expounder of the laws. Presumably the reference is not to the Decalogue itself, but to the Code of Laws. What in Exodus is the so-called Book of the Covenant, it's its counterpart in the Code of Laws in Deuteronomy. And it is this book which produces the phrase, "by the word of the Lord," which becomes a foreshadowing of the whole theology of legal interpretation that later will undergird the Talmud, as every rabbinic ruling is halakha leMoshe miSinai, a law according to Moses from Sinai. Deuteronomy, my friends, is different. It's a series of speeches, almost sermons, surrounding a recap of laws. It was the missing book of the Torah for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so its rediscovery in the 7th century before the Common Era had to allow the words of Moses to speak to a different audience. There needed to be a parallel, an equivalence between this gathering, this new assembly at the Jordan, and the defining experience at Sinai, which is repeatedly referred to as Yom HaKahal, the Day of Assembly. And in creating that link, there is the creation of an equivalence between the experience of this audience, physically present to receive Moses' last words, and that of the 7th century before the Common Era audience and its prospective heirs, which are us, listening to the newfound book of Deuteronomy and assenting to its authority. The resources of rhetoric are marshaled to create through a written text the memory of a foundational national event, so that the latter-day Israelites listening to this book of teaching, Sefer HaTorah Hazeh, will feel that they themselves are reenacting that event. How brilliant is that? Now, Moses' first discourse, beginning in chapter 1, is a rapid and highly selective recapitulation of elements in the wilderness that are already reported in Exodus and Numbers. But you will notice changes from what was read before. Just the opening tells you this. Moses begins by talking of the judges, but certain facts have changed and names left out. not to protect the innocent, mind you. Nowhere is Yitro, Moses' Midianite father-in-law, mentioned. Nothing must be allowed to diminish from the depiction here of Moses' strong leadership, grounded in his wisdom and in his uniquely direct access to God. Moses' words tie two generations, separated by at least 500 years, together as if they were the same. And that, my friends, has been one of the most incredible and powerful tools of the Torah. It still does it to this day, as the words fly off the page reminding you of what you saw, what you heard. Don't you remember? And you will notice a phrase used over and over again. Ba'et hachi, at that time. A recurring rhetorical strategy. At that time. Temporally positions both Moses and his audience in relation to the legal injunction he's delivering. You heard it then, or at least your now dead parents did. And its imperative force is exactly the same now as it is repeated. And again, it will be the same when these words of Moses are read out to their audience in the 7th century or the 21st century. The Israelites have completed their long and arduous flight through the wilderness and now stand before Moses, just east of the land of Canaan. Emotionally, the wilderness is a place to be remembered with fear and trembling. A place that tried the soul of the nation, all that great and fearful wilderness. Kol hamidbar hagadol veharara. And the use of that serves to keep it as a haunting memory of a very palpable experience recently undergone. In fact, the terror of the wilderness will be carried forward in Deuteronomy all the way to the Song of Moses, which speaks of the wilderness land, the waste of the howling desert. It is the wilderness, Moses says, which you have seen. Again and again, the audience of this National Assembly is reminded that they have seen, or in a frequent variation, that their eyes have seen, the portentous events that Moses is reviewing. It is fantastic. The members of his historical audience of the book of Deuteronomy are implicitly invited to imagine what their forebears actually saw, to see it and live it vicariously. The Midrashim notion that all future generations of Israel were already present as witnesses at Sinai is brought forth, perhaps actually generated by this rhetorical strategy of the evocation of witnessing in Deuteronomy. All the people standing before Moses now would have been under the age of 20, perhaps most of them as yet unborn at the time the events are being recalled in his speech. Yet Moses repeatedly speaks as though they were all direct participants in or observers of the episodes he mentions. There is a slide of identification between one generation and another. Most of those listening to Moses' words could not literally have seen the things which he speaks about, but the people is simply imagined as a continuous entity. It is the unique event at Sinai, my friends, that is the very matrix of collective memory in Deuteronomy. The 10 words enunciated in Exodus are, of course, proclaimed again here. And though there are certain famous divergences in wording between the two texts, the restatement of these 10 foundational imperatives reverberates throughout time. The origins of the people in the patriarchal period are just entirely reduced to the reference of God's having sworn the land to your fathers. The great signs and portents of the Exodus are mentioned in just those terms, but there are no vivid representations of the 10 plagues or of the splitting of the Sea of Reeds. The Sinai Epiphany, on the other hand, in all its terror and wonder, is a moment to which Moses' speech repeatedly reverts. Thus the proclamation of the Decalogue is prefaced by these words: "Face to face did the Lord speak with you on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I was standing between the Lord and you at that time to tell you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid in the face of the fire and did not go up the mountain." Although the parallel account in Exodus has thunder, lightning, and the whole mountain smoking, Deuteronomy chooses to emphasize the pure and even more unapproachable substance of divine fire from which God's words are emitted. The narrative has come a long way from cosmic Genesis. No seas split, no angels appear. There are in fact no miracles at all in Deuteronomy. At the burning bush, Moses tries to escape from the assignment to go speak to Pharaoh by saying, "I'm not a man of words." Now he has become a man of words. More than any other human in the Bible, Moses grows and changes in the course of his life, and it is a lesson to us all. One can change. Change professions, change values, change lifestyle, change character. One can grow and become stronger and better. We watched as a regular human being with weaknesses, a temper, fears, and flaws, with key pieces unrevealed, comes to be the leader of a nation, a spokesman for God, and the founder of a faith that plays a role in the destiny of humankind. This book ushers in a new era, my friends. In place of the acts of God, there is the Word of God, and the Word is good. Now you know that you are real. Show your friends that you and me belong to the same world, turned on to the same Word. Have you heard? Have you heard? The world is sacred, so is everything in it. Express your gratitude, my friends. Light a candle, make a wish, celebrate your life and the lives of those you love. Share your feelings with them, live free, be free, and honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, be blessed. Share and honor the light, all who live in the light. Continue to shine, continue to send everyone you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace and freedom for everyone, an end to terror and hatred. And remember, friends, we are a community. We learn together, we celebrate each other, we love each other. We share this ride together, men and women equally. Get well, Phil. Thank you all, love you all. See you all next time. And I do love seeing you again. And remember, your wishes do come true. Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither wildly as they slip away across the universe. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.